Welcome back, dear listeners, to my next podcast. And today I'm going to be discussing a couple of the characteristics and warning signs about pedophiles. First of all, pedophiles don't have signs on their backs or neon arrows pointing over their heads. It's easier to believe that the dirty old man in the park rather than the clean cut bus driver down the street is a pedophile. Pedophiles aren't confined to our Catholic churches. They are in Protestant churches, synagogues, and mosques. Some of them are teachers, counselors, scout leaders, truck drivers, factory workers, youth ministers, or even your own grandparents. It might sound shocking to those who are not familiar with these normal characteristics of a pedophile who could be living right amongst your own family or as a neighbor or best friend. In fact, they are wherever children can be found, irrespective of their age, race, education, occupation, class, social standing, or income. Celibacy isn't the reason priests prey on children. Sexual attraction to children and sexual gratification from children are the reasons. Let us discuss the characteristics of a pedophile. There is no hard and fast profile of a pedophile. I'll give you some of the general characteristics to begin with. They are popular with both children and adults. They appear to be trustworthy and respectable, have a good standing in the community. They prefer the company of children. They feel more comfortable with children than adults. They are mainly attracted to pre-pubescent boys and girls. They could also be heterosexual, homosexual, or bisexual. They groom children with quality time, video games, parties, candy, toys, gifts, and even money. They single out children who seem troubled and in need of attention or affection. They might even act as a close mentor to those kids. They often date or marry women with children that are the age of his preferred victims. They rarely force or coerce a child into sexual contact, usually through trust and friendship, or this physical contact could also be very gradual, from touching to picking up to holding on the lap to kissing, etc. They also derive gratification in a number of ways. For some, just looking is enough. For others, taking pictures or watching children undress is enough. Still, others require more contact. They also find different ways and places to be alone with children. This private atmosphere is important to them, where they can carry out their personal contact with the child or even babies. They are primarily, but not always, believe you me, not always male, masculine, better educated, more religious than average, in their 30s, and choose jobs allowing them greater access to children. Yes, they are usually family men, have no criminal record, and deny that they abused children. Very interesting. Even after they have been caught, convicted, incarcerated, and court ordered into a sex offender program. The marriage is often troubled by sexual dysfunction, and some of these men choose very passive women whom they can dominate over. So be careful of those signs as well. And sometimes this also serves as a smokescreen for the pedophile's true preferences and practices. If they have these sexual dysfunctions, for example, quite often, but not always, they themselves are also victims of some form of childhood sexual abuse. Now, dear listeners, even if the pedophile has no children, his home is usually child friendly with toys, books, video games, computers, bikes, swing sets, skateboards, a recreational room, a pool, snacks, anything that could attract children to his home and keep those kids coming back. Usually, the items reflect the preferred age of his victims. Now, let us take a look at a female pedophile. They usually abuse a child when partnered with an adult male pedophile and is often herself a victim of chronic sexual abuse. A pedophile can act independently or be involved in an organized ring, including the internet. Now, the internet is full of these dark webs. It is absolutely growing in size worldwide, these pedophile rings, and it's often very difficult to find these pedophiles. But I would like to mention that there are official pro pedophilia groups, especially one called NAMBLA, NAMBLA, the North American Man Boy Love Association, and other pro pedophilia groups. Some pedophiles recognize that their behavior is criminal, immoral, and unacceptable by society and operate in secrecy. Some are quite open and militant about their practices and advocate the normalization of pedophilia under the guise of freedom of speech and press, and they use innoxious language like intergenerational intimacy, absolute hogwash. Now, what is the meaning of pedophile? Pedo means child in Greek. Phili is a derivative of Greek, Latin, and French meaning love. The exclusive type of pedophile is attracted to children only. The non exclusive type is attracted to both children and adults. Now, let's take a look at the abuse patterns and the treatment. A pedophile will not stop on his own, never, and will not turn himself in, never, because he does not take responsibility for his behavior and denies that he's doing anything harmful. He will continue to abuse until he is caught. Now, families out there, if you know that your father or your uncle or any family member, or even the female part, is involved in this kind of behavior and abuse. Now, often families protect each other. They don't allow anybody from the outside to know what's going on in the inside. Please, this is the worst thing you can do. They say blood is thicker than water, but believe you me, you're not doing the kids in the family a favor by keeping your mouth shut. Open up. That's the first step, the hardest step, and the rest will follow. I will give you some information at the end of this podcast where you can seek help. But please do not be silent, because those kids, those young kids before the age of 3, they will not know the difference between right and wrong. After that age, they assimilate this kind of behavior as normality. Please protect your kids. Now let's go further here. Now, a child does not always recognize when he or she is being abused, manipulated, or groomed. Listen to that word, groomed by a pedophile. Pedophiles are very, very manipulative. Pedophiles know the language of a trade. They know how to communicate extremely well and very eloquently with others. And often these pedophiles could also be alpha males. And they attract similar kind of people into their cliques. And often those people are very young teenagers themselves from troubled homes. But remember one thing: unless the pedophile is a sexual sadist, he does not have to threaten a child into silence. The trust, the gifts, the secrecy, and relationship are enough. In some cases, the abuser will coerce the child into silence by often saying that if anyone finds out, he would go to jail, or the child would, and maybe the child's parents too. In other cases, threats to harm the child, their beloved pets, and family are often used as a weapon against the child. Now, pedophiles can be treated but never cured. I repeat, pedophiles can be treated but not cured because their sexual preference has always been and always will be children. Their urges will always be present, they will never go away. Therefore, treatment focuses on changing, curbing, or redirecting the acting out behaviors of pedophiles. Now, let's just summarize a couple of interesting points here. Knowing the profile of a pedophile, does this mean that the little league coach who has a great rapport with kids and treats them to pizza at his house is suspect? Or that the teacher who throws pool parties is? Of course not. The majority of people who like and work with children are not all pedophiles. It does mean that we should be observant of all the adults in our children's lives, wherever they wear a white collar, a blue collar, or if they are a clerical collar worker, or even if it's the doting, loving grandparents. Please, just remember, be observant at all times. And if a child tells us he or she has been sexually abused by someone, be it the family, friend, or trusted adults, we are obligated by law, no matter which country you're living in, to report it to a child abuse hotline, your local police, or even your local children's services agency. We are there to help you wherever you're a young child or a parent or even a neighbor. If you know that somebody is sexually abusing someone in the family or outside the family, please report it. Thank you to the Mental Health Center of America. I hope that you have enjoyed this very informative but very important podcast on the characteristics and identification of pedophiles. Thank you very much. Your host, Celeste.